Okay, so um, my name is Klee, and I wanted to make a YouTube channel for us in the diaspora, so that about our children with autism, that get that diagnosis and what we can do, how we can handle that, the different emotions that we go through, how we can educate our children, and just really seek to be just that driving force that they need us to be. I'm doing this not because I think I'm an amazing talker or that I'm the perfect person for doing this, but I'm doing it because I have not found anyone, very many people in our community that put themselves out there to give encouragement. So when my daughter was first diagnosed, and even before she was diagnosed, I was scared, I was confused, and I just wanted to find some help or find some people to be encouraging. And I wasn't really able to find much of that on YouTube. And YouTube is a really great place to get information and to at least somewhat educate yourself. Not to say that everyone on YouTube are doctors or know everything, but it's good to get a different person's perspective, hear from another mom or another dad or another grandparent or aunt or cousin or something like that, so that you can get their perspective on what they may be going through or how they conquered some of the things that they worried about. So anyways, that's what I'm here. I'm just here for, I'm hoping to be able to encourage other mothers, fathers, aunts, uncles, grandparents, or caretakers, or anyone who um, has a child in their life, or a person in their life who lives with autism. And so my daughter, she lives with autism, and I absolutely love her. She's amazing. She's just awesome. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about my daughter so that you can kind of get my perspective, because we will all have different perspectives because each child will be different. But there may be some things that I've gone through or am currently going through that can encourage you, or that can give you ideas, because just because our children are not the same doesn't mean we can learn to think outside the box. And so that's what I'm always about, thinking outside the box. And so that's what I always think, how can I think outside the box and do what's best for my child? So I may not do what someone else is doing particularly, but it may spark a thought in my brain to do something that would fit her best. Okay, so I always say that my daughter is super teachable. She's so teachable. She just needs to be taught a little bit more than maybe the average person in some places. In some places, she can actually be taught a whole lot less than the average person. But in the places where she struggles, she just needs me to think a little bit more outside of the box. She needs me to understand how to teach her well and teach her better in those areas. And so that's how I think of my daughter. Also, she's very high functioning. Um, sh- but also with that very high functioning, of course, there comes some issues still, because she, of course, was she lives with autism and she was diagnosed with autism. So she does have some things that we have to focus on or concentrate on, or things that we have to help her with. She's a great visual learner, so she's not as strong at learning through her hearing and listening. Her auditory skills are not the best. They've grown a lot over the years, but when we first started with the understanding of her diagnosis and things like that, definitely that was not her strongest learning skill. And so I went a lot with teaching her visually, because that's her strongest way of learning. And so that's one thing to also consider. How does your child or the person learn best? What's their strongest way of learning? Because if you come from that perspective, you can teach them something a lot faster and a lot better, and they'll understand it quickly. She also is very interested in learning tactile, using her touch, and just being able to touch things, squeeze things, interact with things. She loves that. Of course, all children do, but that's definitely a way for her to learn and be taught quickly or a lot faster. First, so she also started with speech delay. She did not speak for a while. I don't want to say a very long time because there are some children who are on the spectrum who don't speak, and who are nonverbal. She is not nonverbal. She's very much so verbal now, but it took some extra effort to get her there. Um, so because she's more visual and she wasn't speaking, I started out with how can I make these sounds as visual as possible. So, some of that is I started with sign language, teaching her with sign language because sign language is a visual language. That was very helpful for her. She loved sign language and she did really great with that. So understanding that she taught herself some signs also because she's just visual. So when she would see a sign or an example of a sign, she would catch on to it quite quickly. So then I started trying to figure out how can I make sounds visual. How can I get her to understand these sounds visually through her visual understanding? And so I started with letters. We did letters. We did. She always loved the ABC. She loved when I sang ABC. She loved when I signed ABC. So it was a big thing that we always did. And so so I started adding in the sounds. So I started teaching her the sounds of the letters so that she would hear the sounds as people would speak. And so I thought her hearing the sounds individually, she might be able to hear and understand and say them better if she really concentrated on learning them. Maybe she would hear them more easily. That was not necessarily the case, but because she loved the sound so much, she learned to read very early. So she began reading while she was 2, shortly before she turned 3. So somewhere between 2.5 and 3, she began to read, and she would read small words, and that's how I got her to talk. And so through all of her therapies, the best way that she was taught everything, almost everything verbally, is through her reading it first. And so that amazed so many of her therapists because she just came to reading very quickly. That was one thing that was not hard to teach her at all. She was stellar. She still is a stellar reader. And so she is currently 5, and she reads extremely well. But so she was 3 and starting her therapies. Well, we did do early development therapy, but as far as the therapy after being diagnosed, that therapy, during all of those therapies, they did a lot of note cards, writing things down because that was the best way she learned. And that is what I told them. I said, if you want her to say something, you need to write it down because she is not going to repeat what you say, especially doing it the right way. She did a lot of echoing at the time. She would echo, echo, echo. So she wouldn't respond. So if you ask her a question, she may echo the question instead of answering the question. But if you want to get her to answer the question, then you write down the answer and she would read the answer. And she would go, oh, okay, this is how this works. So you ask me something, I respond. So she didn't understand greetings, like hi. She would say hi, but that was the gist of it. And that is more of an echo because you say hi, she says hi. You say hello, she says hello. But if you say, how are you, she would just look because she just didn't know what to do next. And so that's where the note cards and the reading came in so much handy. And so she's absolutely stellar these days. She really much so, I would say, appears or gives off the I don't know, experience. If you experience her on a day-to-day basis, if you see her while we're out and about, or your child may play with her, it's not noticeable that she lives with autism. Of course, most mental struggles people don't see on the outside, but I also mean in the way that she interacts. She does very well, and that's her struggle was more social interaction. Um, yeah, that of course came with the speech, but she's made so much progress through all the therapies, and so that's also what I want to share: what therapies we did, how we did those therapies, what about those therapies were best, and so I want to be able to encourage people in that way. I'm still continuing to do work with my daughter, and so I will still continue to share those types of things too. We do a lot of gardening, we do a lot of hands-on things, we do a lot of teaching how to be sympathetic, empathetic, how to interact with children her age or younger or older, interacting with adults, and just different things like that. So I just want to be able to share those things. Don't want the videos to be too long. And so I would like to be able to share our garden, share our learning experience, share our different therapies that we went through, because I really do believe that we were able to close that gap that she had. And this would be very encouraging for other people in the community who are looking and searching for those answers and understanding, especially because not all of us have the finances to be able to do all these expensive therapies. Of course, through Medicaid and all of that's helpful. But some people sometimes don't even have access to some of the offices given to certain situations and choices that they are making in their families. And so or even people who are in different countries who are not in, because we do live in the United States of America. So, people who don't live in America, people who may live in different countries abroad, and also those that live on the continent. Maybe those resources aren't there, but you still love your child and you want to be able to provide education for your child. And so, yes, we homeschool. I am the homeschooling teacher, of course. My husband is greatly supportive, but I will be showing a lot of that. And so I look forward to being able to share. Thanks. Bye bye.